This is my 2017 Audi S3 Prestige. Just over a year ago, I bought this car. It's now been just over 10,000 miles with it as well. Today I wanted to do a 10,000 mile review, talk about some overall thoughts on this car, any sort of repairs and maintenance I've had done on it, as well as the things I like and dislike, and my future plans. So let's get started. As we hop in the car here, let's take it for a drive and talk about some of my overall thoughts on it to start with. So, I bought this car with about 29,700 miles on it. It's now at just over 41,000, so I've had a good amount of seat time in it. That includes everything from daily driving to road trips to hard driving on twisties and things like that. So I think I have a pretty good sense of what this car is capable of. Let's start with the basics though. 2017 Audi S3. This is essentially Audi's version of the Volkswagen Golf R. So it has 292 horsepower, 280 foot-pounds of torque from a 2-liter turbocharged motor with quattro all-wheel drive. That means this thing can get to 0 to 60 in about 4.6 seconds, although a lot of people have tested it faster even in stock form. I got about 4.35 when I did it myself with launch control. This car is extremely quick off the line. I don't want to say it dies off once you get up to highway speeds and need to overtake someone. It's still quick then, but you can really feel its power down at lower speeds, mainly because of that all-wheel drive. But the car is just great at everything it does. I mean, it's a perfect daily driver in the sense that it's very luxurious, has all the creature comforts you want, amazing technology. It's fast, it handles awesome, it's somewhat practical, I'll talk more on that later, and it also looks really good. I've always thought Audis make the best looking cars out of the big three in Germany, meaning Mercedes, BMW, Audi. I think BMW has pretty universally put themselves out of that conversation with the cars they've been making lately. But after a year of owning it, I'm still very happy with my purchase, and I don't regret buying this car one bit. When I bought this car, it was still under Audi's factory warranty, and that is because that warranty was good for 36,000 miles. So when I first bought the car, I actually got 2 services done on it within the first year of ownership. The first one being what was their 40,000 mile service. It was just due for that due to the age of the car, even though it didn't have 40,000 miles on it yet. So that included a lot of stuff: oil change, new spark plugs, air filter, tire rotation, DSG service, which was very important. DSG is the transmission on this car, so just a fluid change, things like that. I had that done at no cost because of the warranty, and I also had a second service done, which was technically the 50,000 mile warranty. I had that done probably about 5,000 miles ago, and that was done right before the warranty expired, and that was just a simple oil change and brake fluid flush, nothing major on that one. Now that the car is out of warranty, am I concerned? To be 100% honest, I would say my concern level is maybe at a 1 out of 10. This platform, the MQB platform from Audi and Volkswagen, is very, very reliable. I have had no issues with this car outside of one small issue that actually came when the Audi dealership did an inspection right after I bought it. They noticed a little bit of coolant starting to leak from the water pump housing, which is the only common failure point on this car. It's actually such a common failure that they issued a recall on it probably about 2 months after I got this fixed. After haggling with Carvana for a while, they finally said that they would cover that repair, so that was nice because it would have been pretty expensive had I had to pay out of pocket. So with that being about the only common failure point, I'm not really worried about anything else going bad. This car has a very good service history when I bought it. I'm going to be doing most of the servicing myself from now on. Next it should only need an oil change, so that'll be pretty simple to handle. But I'm not worried about things breaking on this car. I very rarely see on Facebook groups and forums people complaining about reliability issues on these. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about some of the things that I really like about this car in the year or so that I've owned it. First off is the technology. This was the main reason why I bought this car over the other things I was looking at, like BMWs, Kia Stinger, Giulia. This car just had the best tech. I mean, the Audi virtual cockpit, this is now a 6-year-old car, and many new cars today still do not have as good of an in-dash infotainment gauge cluster screen as this car does. Audi has revised it since this, but it's very customizable with the things you can show on it. To go along with that, the comfort is good. I also wanted a luxury branded car. I wanted a comfortable daily driver. This car has leather seats. It did not come with the optional sports seats, which, although they look cool, they're not powered and they're not as comfortable. So I was completely fine with these seats. Great lumbar support, very adjustable, easy to find a nice comfortable position to be in. Speaking on ride quality, this car does not have the adjustable suspension, which is actually, now that I'm thinking of it, another sort of common failure point on these cars. A lot of people will do a mag ride delete if their car does have it because they're very expensive to replace. So this car doesn't have adjustable suspension. It does ride a little bit harsh since I put the 19s on it, but it is a sporty car and it handles extraordinarily well. So you can't have both. It's kind of one or the other in most cases. Get on it real quick. Oh yeah. This car just puts you back in your seat. And one of my favorite other selling points on this car was the transmission. There is no other car that I drove that came close to this DSG transmission. This is a 6-speed dual clutch from Audi, and it just shifts so quickly, so smoothly. We're in third right now. Instant into second. I mean, there's just zero hesitation on the gear shifts. It sounds so good. Yes, I actually like how this car sounds. Going to be putting any sort of aftermarket exhaust on it because most of the time straight pipe 4-cylinders do not sound good. This is not an exception to that, but man, just the quick shifting of the transmission is just my favorite feature. It has some small paddle shifters right here. You can also manually shift it over here. I usually just use the paddle shifter so I can keep my hands on the wheel. Speaking a little bit more on the performance, I do really like this engine. I was a little bit hesitant going with a 4-cylinder for my next car. I was thinking I wanted a V6 turbo or maybe even a V8, but the torque on this thing, it has extraordinarily good torque at highway speeds. There's no need to downshift to overtake someone. If you get on it in 6th gear at 75, 80, 85, 90 miles an hour, even lower than that, it's got plenty of torque to just kind of power through and overtake anyone. So lots of good low-end torque on this thing for having a pretty big factory turbo and for only being a 4-cylinder. It has 4 drive modes. There is Comfort, Auto, Dynamic, and Individual. Auto is essentially a drive mode where the car automatically kind of determines how you like to drive and will adjust the settings accordingly. I've never used that drive mode in my year of owning it. Individual allows you to customize the different settings, so like exhaust note, your suspension if you do have adjustable suspension, throttle response, things like that. I don't really ever use individual either. I'm pretty much either in dynamic or comfort. So when I want to do some sporty driving, I'll keep it in dynamic. It'll hold the shift points longer. It'll keep it in sport mode for the transmission, so it holds the gears really long. It'll downshift as you're slowing down. I don't really ever use the sport mode in the transmission because if I want to drive fast, I'll just use the paddle shifters. I do notice that gas mileage is better in comfort mode, so I'll usually drive it in comfort unless I'm trying to have fun. The styling, though, is another huge selling point for me. The Giulia, hands down, is one of the best looking sports sedans out there, and there's no arguing with that. So this does not look as good as the Giulia, but I think it's very close. It's very subtly aggressive, and that's one of the things I've always liked about the sportier Saabs as well. It's not like a Civic Type R with a big wing and fake vents and bullshit everywhere. It's very simple, but aggressive, and I've always really liked that. let's next discuss some of the things I don't like about this car. And the first thing is this screen. So it's a decent size for what it is. It does show its age a little bit compared to new cars. Not necessarily because of the size, but because it's not a touchscreen. It's all controlled through this dial down here and these buttons. Honestly, I don't mind it too much. It would be nicer to have a touchscreen. Every time someone new gets in my car, they automatically think it's a touchscreen and they touch it. Controlling this through the dial down here and all these buttons is way easier than you might think. It's very intuitive, and Audi did a good job integrating it, especially with Apple CarPlay and everything. One other thing I do want to talk about is the build quality on this car. Actually, I forgot to mention this in the things that I like, but that was another big selling point for me on this car versus some of the other cars I drove, especially the Kia Stinger. The Kia Stinger did not feel like a luxury car. It felt like an Optima with leather seats. The shifter was all rattly and cheap. Everything just didn't feel like great build quality. That's not necessarily a big knock against it, that's just a statement of fact. This car, however, you can tell is a true luxury car. Everything has a good click to it. The buttons have a nice, good feedback when you press them. This dial, sorry, something about just twisting that like that and pressing these buttons is very satisfying. It's just, it has a good weight to it. A couple more things I don't like about this car. One of them is the comfort. So I know I talked about earlier, it's a sporty car, it's not meant to be comfortable. Since I put the 19s on this, you can definitely feel little bumps in the road way more than I did with the 18s before. So it does ride just a little bit stiff. I'm sure having mag ride that can be adjustable would help with that. At the end of the day, I don't mind it at all. I bought it knowing it would be a sporty car. It's not going to ride like an S-Class, and I'm 100% okay with that. But just something to consider is it definitely rides like a sporty car. It's by no means uncomfortable, but it's definitely a sporty ride. The gearing also bugs me a little bit. Now, 2015 to 17 S3s have a 6-speed DSG, and 2018 and newer came with a 7-speed, so you got the extra gear. When you're cruising on the highway in this thing doing 75, 80, you're sitting at about 3,000 RPM, which is pretty high. I've never really liked that. The car is by no means noisy or loud as a result of that, but it does impact gas mileage. I usually drive about 80 on the freeway, 75, 80. If I keep it down around 70, I can get about 30 miles per gallon highway, which I think is pretty sufficient given the car's performance and the fact it's all-wheel drive. But when I keep it above 75, 80, it's usually only getting 25 or 24 highway, which is a little bit of a downside, and I would like it to be better, and I'm sure the 7-speed cars, that's not an issue. I am averaging about 26 miles per gallon since we've started our drive, even including those few hard accelerations. So overall, I average about 25 miles per gallon, so not too bad, about the same as my Saabs. Oh yeah. That is a 10,000 mile owner review of my 2017 Audi S3. Future plans for this car, I'm still debating if I want to do a tune, maybe an exhaust, things like that. I mean, a stage 1 tune on this car without any modifications can get me another 60, 70 horsepower, which is pretty awesome. And then you're putting yourself in some serious performance territory at that point. I've also maybe considered an intake just for some more turbo noise. The turbo is fairly loud on this car as is. But that's it for today. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching.